Winn, and you have, hi everybody. This is Krisa Winn. I'm an educational consultant at HSLDA, and thank you so much for joining us today for our Facebook Live with Sarah Reid. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, and then we want to find out about you too. But first, I'm just going to tell you very briefly, Sarah is a homeschool mom. She's a writer, an entrepreneur, and she's served in a variety of roles in the homeschooling community through the years. And she's here to offer us some encouragement, give us some great ideas, and some spur on some creativity, we hope. And she's going to tell us about books she's written and how she can help your kids to self-publish. And I'm really excited to learn about what Sarah has to offer today. But first, I want to invite anybody that's watching us. If you've stumbled upon our broadcast this afternoon, please put your name in the chat. Let us know if you're homeschooling or not, how old your kids are, where you're from. We would love to have that information. So thanks again for joining us. And Sarah, do a better job than I just did and tell us about your homeschool experience.
No, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I love HSLDA, and I really appreciate the work that you do on behalf of homeschoolers. It can be very overwhelming. And so I was just one of those moms that I was like, I'm never going to homeschool. I'm never going to do it. I was like, I told my husband, I was like, you can't leave me with the little people all day. I'm not going to do it. And you know what? I ended up homeschooling. I started when they were in the 3rd and the 6th grade, and it's amazing. I fell in love. I fell in love with the whole process and ended up changing careers and staying with education. I just loved it so much.
Wow, that is cool. Yeah, so did you homeschool then your kids? You started at 3rd grade and 6th grade, and I know. Tell us a little bit about your kids now. Where are they now? What are you doing? How old are they? That sort of thing. A little bit about your family.
So my husband and I, and actually it's so funny. My husband will tell the story that he actually wanted me to homeschool, and I just was like, I don't know. It was just ingrained. I was a public school kid, and it was just ingrained that that's what everybody did. And so when I started homeschooling, so my son is the youngest. He is 22. He is a junior in college at Liberty University, and our daughter is 25. And she is graduating, actually. I think she's a few weeks from finishing her last class, and then she has an internship.
Oh, wow.
And it's exciting. She will have a degree in English. And so she lives with us now as she finishes her degree and saves her money and grows up and gets a real job, as we always say in the Reid household. I just get really excited to still be in the homeschool community. I do miss it. I'm not going to lie, I miss it. But I was, like I say, everyone will learn about me throughout this interview that we're doing is my poor kids. I joke, I say, you know what, they're adults, they're paying taxes, they are drug free, and they contribute to society. Like, I did a great job, and I joke. And so, but they're great kids. They're great kids. They do extremely well in college, and I'm super proud of them.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on that. And what an exciting time to be launching your kids once again from being in that high school setting to college, and now college onto whatever else lies ahead. So that's really exciting. Well, while you were homeschooling, I know something must have happened. I know you enjoyed it. You loved that time with your kids. But you were not an educator prior to that, right? You had a different career. What was it that you saw in the homeschooling community, maybe something that was missing, that kind of moved you to start a publishing company? We haven't really mentioned that, but Sarah has a publishing company. It's called Innovative Learning Press. But what's the history, or how did all that unfold?
Yeah, thanks. As I mentioned, I started homeschooling. They were 3rd and 6th grade. And what I loved about it, it was just the fact that they didn't know something, and through my effort they knew something. And you've heard it said, knowledge is power, and I think it's freedom too. And so seeing my kids going and to where they were growing in knowledge and they were able to apply that to their life, I just thought, wow, this is amazing to see how they were changing, and how their outlook in life was changing, according to what I was doing at home with them. So it really just inspired me a lot. My undergrad is in a business, so it really was not in education. But I had so much fun creating curriculum for them in some areas. I certainly am going to be honest with all the homeschool parents out there. I never wrote a math curriculum. Never read one that I liked, but a lot of the electives, I wrote my own curriculum. We did our own projects, and I also enjoyed the freedom of that, which was amazing. The freedom of that. So, and I've seen how it's impacted their lives. I've seen how the choices that I made on curriculum, the way that I taught them, the things I chose to emphasize over other things. I can tell you, number one, I think thing that I look back at is the people that they are today are absolutely a direct result of certain choices I made in homeschool. And so that to me was incredible.
That's amazing. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I totally realized I didn't answer the second part. I got all caught up in the amazing aspect of homeschooling. So I was in private education when I started homeschooling. I started teaching in private school first, private Christian school, and then teaching in a big homeschool education center. I had about a little over 400 kids, I think, in that center, and eventually opened my own learning center. And during that time, I ended up writing my first curriculum, the novel writing curriculum. And then COVID happened, and the education center closed down in 2020. And I just saw how God moved me into a different area. And then now I write full time, and we have many curriculum. About as fast as I can write them, they're coming out.
I'm sorry about that, Sarah. I had technical issues, I think. I heard you say that you were writing your first novel writing curriculum. Is that up there? Because I lost part of that.
Oh, sure. I thought I just stunned you with my awesomeness into silence there, and you were just in awe thinking of it. No, I know, technical issues. Yeah, so I wrote my first curriculum, I believe it was in 2017 that I wrote it. And my beta testers, as we call it in the writing world, my beta testers were one of my classes. And they all wrote and published novels. And I tell you, it was unlike anything else. And so now I'm just truly blessed to expand on that, as well as writing other curriculum.
That's awesome. And I love that you gave students that opportunity. I haven't written a book myself, but I have written music. And I remember the feeling when I heard my songs being played or sung by someone before. It was pretty amazing. So I love that you are giving students that opportunity. Are you still with me? Because I feel you're frozen, but you're here?
Oh, okay, no, I can still hear you. Yeah.
So, okay, great. So tell us, you've written this curriculum. It's a novel writing curriculum program, and you brought those first beta testers process. How is that approach? How do you do that in a curriculum? What does that look like? If parents wanted to do, to jump on something like that too, what does that look like through the year?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
Professional authors, fiction, because fiction and nonfiction can be different, but the majority of professional authors take about 2 years to write a novel. So on day one, the first, hard knocks conversation I have is that this is going to be amazing, but it's going to be work. And so I'm really, really passionate about stories. My kids were raised on reading, my son was not a big reader. It was pretty much like pulling teeth. And I was just so thankful that graphic novels came in, like Shakespeare, and some of the classics were actually written as graphic novels, or my kid never would have read a single thing. So, and ironically,
Yeah,
he was in
I
my
have one of
first
those.
year
I have one of
that I taught. Yeah. I know. I'm like,
those.
how genetically you're supposed to love this stuff. It's in my
Yes.
blood. It should be in his. Yeah. So actually, my son was the funny thing was, is my son being the younger one. So my daughter loved stories, and they both loved movies. And I would argue and say, I think everybody at some level loves stories, whether it's reading. You mentioned music, songwriting, listening to music. They're all
Mhm.
stories. Story comes to us in so many ways, and everybody loves that. But for me, I'm passionate about that, and it's really interesting because I always get two kinds of students. I get the ones who don't like to write, and we do get those, and we have them. I have them in my classes, and I just basically say, look, English is interesting because it's the only subject in school that you have to have all 4 years of high school. So math, you can usually get away with 2 or 3 years, science 2 years, but for graduation, you need 4 years of English. And so for kids that don't love it or don't even really like it very much, don't have confidence, it's difficult. It is very, very difficult. And that's why the 180 days curriculum is amazing, because I always say to kids when we do a lot of homeschool conferences, and a lot of families will come up to our table, and a lot of times, and it doesn't, boys and girls, but often boys, they're like, I don't like to write. And I was like, and we talk a little bit. I was like, look, you have to have 4 years of English. You can write more essays, read more, literature and British literature. I was like, or you can blow stuff up. Like, what do you want to do? And they always like, okay, I can write what I want. And I'm like, well, sure, it's up to your parents, but yeah. And so I think the biggest selling point of our curriculum is that they are meeting all of the English language arts standards. I actually aligned the curriculum to every standard for those that did need it. There are some states where homeschoolers are trying to meet state standards. But also, if they wanted to get into any college that they wanted to, I wanted to make sure it was a rigorous program. So to get back to your question is, the curriculum is written in such a way that people can do it independently and do it from home, and parents can help their kids. You don't have to teach them. We've written the curriculum in such a way that everything they need is actually in the workbook, and we're guiding them
Okay.
and we're helping them in the workbook. But you just have to encourage them, because again, back to that first day of school, it's hard work. They underestimate that there is actually the work involved, and so it's really critical. And the last thing is, I also have the students that love to write. And when I ask them what their books are about, when they're standing at my table at a conference, or if I meet them somewhere and ask them what their book is about, they tell me this long sequence of events. And I'm like, that's great. But when they start the class, this is what I teach them. A story is not a sequence of events, a cool sequence of events strung together with this great, ending. I said a story is one thing. It's an emotional journey. That's it. Full stop. End of story. A story is an emotional journey. And once kids recognize and learn what that means, which is how I teach them what is a story. It's not plot and character and setting specifically. It's an emotional journey. And once they understand that, then my job as an instructor is just to kind of guide them towards that publishing aspect. And that's something I think that is unique to this curriculum versus just, again, learning
Hmm.
the elements of a fiction novel.
Right. Yeah, it's almost like you're giving them a why.
Yes.
Kids are always saying, well, why do I need to know this? Or when am I ever going to use this? And you're giving them a why. And I assume that that's constantly before them. I'm doing this because I'm telling a story, and it's a way to engage them and give them a motivation, I would imagine, to keep at it, even when it is hard.
Yeah.
So we know, and I always say this as an advocate and someone who comes along homeschool mom is, that your kids better than anybody else. Nobody loves your kids more than you do. Nobody knows your kids really better than you do. So what are some important things to look for when you're deciding on curriculum? That's a question we're getting constantly right now. I need the best curriculum for it. What are some things that you're looking for, or that you could advise parents on when they're looking for curriculum? What do you think they need to look for and see?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're right, kids are all different. And I think there's a couple of things I want to say. Is one is it's good to know what your children's learning style is and what environment they like, but you also need to know your own self too. Because, like I can tell you right now, I am not going to get a rigorous curriculum that teaches Latin at starting at 6:30 in the morning, and has 800 field trips in a year. I just know myself. I know that when I am looking at curriculum, I need to see what is going to really feed to my children's interests, but also I have to be capable of it. And I think sometimes the first thing I did when I became a homeschool mom is I had to go through the process to learn and accept. See, it's not just knowing, it's actually believing that I'm not going to mess my kids up. They're going to be okay, and I think when you do that, you relax a little bit in that. And so then when I chose curriculum, I specifically turned a couple of them down because I thought, I'm not going to be successful with that. I know my limitations. I know, and not that I didn't stretch myself. I did, like I said, math or science or things that weren't as much, me. But I looked at curriculum with like what I was capable of doing and how it was going to fit into our schedule. The other thing is, although kids are different, not every parent has the time or the money to be able to pick curriculum that fits every child's needs. And so I think like for me, what I did was I chose curriculum that had some flexibility within it. So if a curriculum was something where I could modify it fairly easily for different children, then that worked better for me. So, and I think, like I said, is there's some rules of thumb that we all accept, about curriculum. But one of the best things I like to advise parents on is talk to other parents who have gone before you. There's a lot of Facebook groups. There's a lot of local groups for homeschool. The HSLDA has information. And when it comes to actual curriculum, the homeschool conferences are really good as well because you're able to walk around and talk to vendors and look at their curriculum and ask questions. So yeah, I'd say definitely don't be hard on yourself. Know what you're capable of, and look, you're just going to fail. Like there's going to be at least one time that you are going to pick something or try something and it's just not going to work, and it's okay. Like that's the other thing is give yourself permission. Nobody gets it all right. And like, that's why I joke. I was like, hey, my kids, they're adults, they pay taxes, they are contributing to society. We're doing great, we're doing great.
I love that. That's great advice. Thank you so much for that. And I love too that you said that you go into it with that mindset that I'm not going to mess my kids up. I'm not going to mess my kids up. You don't have to be perfect in order to homeschool your children. Okay, Sarah, I know you've told me you're a storyteller. So with your experience homeschooling yourself and then working with homeschoolers through the past many years up to the pandemic, like, can you share some curriculum stories with us? Like maybe some stories that you could relate to us where someone tried to do it all and it kind of blew up in their face, or I don't know, just in kind of choosing curriculum story that you could share with our audience that might encourage them or maybe laugh at themselves or just kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because again, the diversity of mindsets in homeschool is what makes us homeschool, right? And look, here's my first piece of advice when it comes to all of this is if you feel like you're messing your kids up, load them in the car, find your nearest, public high school and drive really slowly and just look at them when they're all getting out. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't worry. Especially nowadays. spend time with, public school where you've got, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 kids, all together 5 days a week. Their interaction with a lot of different adults is limited, mostly with each other. And then we talk to homeschoolers, and there's a big difference. There's a really big difference. And so I'm excited working with the homeschool community, because I see, especially society continues to go on in this kind of new world that we see ourselves living in post-COVID, right? Where electronics and technology has become a bigger part of our lives than it ever was before. And we're seeing some of those negative effects. So what I used to tease my kids, like, you want to go to you're going to go to the P school. You're going to go to the P school, which is public school, right? And they'd be like, no, don't send me to public school, because I used to make up stories about public school all the time and stuff. And I was like, no, you'll be fine. And I was just that kind of snarky mom that I'm known for saying, suck it up, buttercup, all the time. I'm like, look, life doesn't always do everything the way you want it. So when it came to like taking tests or doing certain things that they didn't particularly like, I was like, suck it up, buttercup. Life doesn't always work the way you want it. Sometimes you have to do things, right? You're like, hey, if you've ever been to a California DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles, and taken a test, it's evil. It's just evil. It's there to make you feel really bad about yourself and stupid. So life just has these things. So, yeah, I'd say you're doing a better job than public school. I think for myself, I did not, a lot of parents get, or moms and dads, whoever's doing the primary homeschooling, they get burned out usually around April. Everybody's just kind of done and over it. And, because you've just got that last six-week push. You're fatigued. The kids are fatigued. We didn't really get that in our household. And I mean, I only had 2 kids, so it wasn't like I was, that busy. But we just did a lot of taking a week off here and there and exploring a new area. We'd go down, and I lived in California, so we'd have beach days, and we'd go learn something at the beach, and we'd stay the night down there, or we mixed it up a lot. So I'd say that's another thing that really helped a lot is you can learn through life, a lot of areas through life. And then it doesn't always have to be sitting at the table, doing textbooks. There's a lot of diversity that you can also have with your curriculum choices. And I would probably say that with my kids, we emphasized a couple of things. So I recognize with my kids that they're going to memorize things, and, it's that, they call it the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. We forget 90% of what we learn, usually within 7 days. And so I knew that they were going to forget a lot of those memory skills, right? I didn't worry about that. We made sure we did that, but I really emphasized critical thinking and writing. Those were 2 big things that they had no choices on. And critical thinking is, I was almost going to say critical thinking is critical. It is essential in today's young people, I think, because I know it's like a big question to try to answer, like what I say, but critical thinking nowadays, I would say, is more important than a lot of other things that we could do. It's not just giving our children information to learn, but it's how that they are assessing that information. It's also presenting multiple sides of an argument or a thought. And history is a great thing that we can present multiple sides of historical viewpoints and really teach our kids to think very critically and deeply about that information. I always felt was significantly more important in the long term than just memorizing information. So we definitely did a lot of schooling outside the home. We did a lot of like stories. So every time they would learn information, I would try to find a movie or a documentary or a book that kind of reinforced some of the key points, and we would follow it up with that. Or we'd go somewhere and have like a hands-on experience supporting that. And so I'm a big advocate for mix it up. You won't tend to burn out sometimes, in those last 6 weeks, we call it the 6-week crunch. If you mix it up a little bit, give yourself a little bit of a break, mix it up. do something different. Like I said, you're not going to mess them up, and I guarantee you they are going to be better off. Okay, I guarantee you they're going to be better off for homeschooling.
That's so good. Thanks for that advice. And I hope that's encouraging to those of you that are out there right now watching this live, that really just going back again to what you said, like teaching your kids to be critical thinkers. That really is part of your curriculum. Your curriculum isn't really the book you hold in your hand. It is the skill that you're trying to impart or to teach. And you're a problem solver, right, Sarah? And so even if you skip something or you didn't teach a learning standard, you've taught your kids to know how to, wow, that's a little bit of a problem. I didn't cover this, in math or science. How am I going to solve this problem? And if you taught them to be critical thinkers, they'll know how to go after that, and it's going to be okay. So I think everybody needs to know that at the front of the race, that you've got what it takes to equip your children. And just take a deep breath. It's okay if you don't land on the perfect materials to do it, but go in with that mindset of helping your kids to be critical thinkers, to teach them how to become good writers. Writing is so important. And I think it's becoming, maybe you'll disagree with me, but I feel like it's becoming a little bit of a lost art, Sarah, with texting. Some of our teens are more prone to text, and a lot of times in abbreviations than they are to actually write. So we got to hold the line.
Yeah. You know what? I'm glad you brought that up, Krisa, because I'm telling you, they don't even text anymore. It's talk to text now. So I just recognize, like, I'm glad you said that, because here's the interesting thing is, even with my own students, spelling, students don't know how to spell, and they don't think about it. The written word, I will argue this, the written word is one of the most significant, whether you call it discovery or inventions, of modern man, of man. I mean, think about it. Where would we be without the written word of God, right? Where would we be without written word, history, and sharing of knowledge? So it has become a lost art. And I will tell you this about our particular curriculum, and this is, I call it my happy accident. When I first wrote this curriculum, I was writing it because I was trying to help originally my son, who doesn't like to write. And that is a non-starter in my family. Like, with him, it was always a struggle. So I started doing whatever I could. Like, if that kid wanted something, he had to write me a 2 or 3 page essay to get it, like, oh, you want to eat dinner tonight? Well, write me a 2-page, persuasive essay with at least 3, I'm kidding. I fed him most nights. I fed him. But no, if he wanted to buy something rather, I mean, he's 6'6" now. Trust me, I fed him. He's a big kid. But no, if he wanted like a video game, which he wasn't a big gamer, so there was no other reason not to say no at all. He wasn't a big gamer. It was a clean game. He wanted a game, and I was like, write me 3 pages and persuade me, and you must use at least 2 statistics, right? And I just gave him, I was like, go ahead. And I bought him the game. You know what I mean? So I was always trying to find creative ways to get him to write. Because honestly, if you can learn to write and clarity and organization, if you can learn these things, you will do well in so many areas. Because if you think about most of the subjects in school, you're writing for it, And so I wanted to solve a problem. Most of the curriculums that I have written were to solve problems. And so I was trying to figure out something to get him motivated. And I call it the happy accident because, so my son, I mentioned, is a junior. I'm thinking he's a junior now. They're about to go back to school here in a week. He's a junior at Liberty. And so he had to do all of his undergrad or his early work, his first 2 years of his general education. And he got, I think, pretty much straight A's. And, so you're doing like certain sciences, but you're doing history and sociology, and you're doing all these different classes for general education. Most of them are essay driven, and he got A's on pretty much every essay. What was interesting was, because he showed me some of this, he would get comments from his professors on, well organized, good clarity, nice, complimenting his actual writing, which was funny because
Okay.
taking the class,
Uh-huh.
like when he did the novel writing class with me. So I was his teacher and his mom, so I had to do both roles for him. It's not like, and like my son has a novel. I show it at all of the homeschool conferences when kids come up. It's not like at the end of it when it was published, he was like, "Oh, mom, I love this. I'm going to write more." No, I was no way. That's like a storybook
You
ending.
didn't want
But he was
to.
like, yeah, it's not the reality, right? But he was like, he's like, it was pretty cool. And I was like, hey, I'll take it. I will take a pretty cool from him for high school English. And so, but now here's the thing is that when you do take the 180 days, because I have, like I said, really put a lot into inspiring kids to tell a story and this emotional journey. They're doing a lot of outlining, researching things that they don't necessarily think that they're researching, but
Mm,
they're pre-writing. They're doing a lot of pre-writing. So my son now, when he writes essays, he's very good at all the pre-writing. In fact, and like I said,
mm.
he's good at researching now. He's very good at researching. So I always joke I'm actually just finishing up my grad work right now, and I always joke and tell my husband because I write fiction novels, and I always say, you know what, honey, tell the whole family, if the FBI kicks down our door and throws me down on the ground and puts some zip ties around my wrist, don't say like, hey, where's your warrant? Don't say like, oh, call a lawyer. Just shout out loud and clear, she's a fiction writer. Because I tell you, the stuff that I do research on, like how do you make a bomb or what kind of, drugs or this or that, because I don't know anything about drugs. So I have to Google drugs. I have the
Mhm.
craziest research. It's weather in Saigon, in October.
Yeah.
There's just so much research. And through that process, you just learn a lot. So that's one of those, like I said, happy accidents that not just that after I was teaching it for a while, but a lot of parents have come back and said, like, I love the skills that they've gained. They're more thorough. Their grammar is better. You mentioned earlier about with the texting and the way, and I call it the
Mhm.
TikTok generation, it's everything so quick and immediate, but a novel is not, a story is not. And we keep them really tied into, because stories are really about humanity. They're, like I said, they're not about a bunch of cool things that happen, because a lot of cool things happen. And in my books, things do definitely blow up. I read a lot of action,
Sounds like.
so things blow up.
Mhm.
But it's about humanity, and it's about exploring humanity and community, especially. So they're learning so much. And I always tell parents, and I make sure kids don't hear me when I say this, I say, you will learn a lot about your child when they do this. Because when they're
Mm.
writing a novel, we're always trying, especially in homeschool, right? We're always trying to instill morality in our kids, right? We're always trying to teach them right and wrong and good and evil and, law and mercy and all of these things that we're trying to teach them. But in this particular course, they have to decide, what does that look like? They have to have a character
Mm.
who makes choices and who fails. And sometimes a character who makes a choice that hurts other people. And so what does redemption actually look like? But they're the ones that are originating all of those thoughts. So I always say, I know
Mm.
I always like kind of joke, like I should charge more money because, as a joke, because there is so much that my students are discovering about themselves through this process and about what they really believe. And you definitely
Mhm.
see that woven into their finished novel. So every
Mhm.
time I taught for 5 years prior to COVID, and I'm just going back to the classroom, the Zoom online classroom, and teaching again. And I have almost 90 students this coming year. I have multiple
Okay.
classes, 90 students. And I'm not gonna lie, I'll like cry that last week when all the kids are holding up their books that they've written. I will like just cry because I know their hearts have gone into this, and it just makes me excited. And I get copies of all their books, and I still have copies for years, so it's exciting.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Very rewarding for them and for you and for parents. So sounds like a win-win-win.
Yes.
So do you mainly work with high students or um, I mean, I don't want to get too much into exactly, your products necessarily, but I know you've mentioned the 180 days to, what is the full title of that particular
Yeah,
program? 180
so
days to
to
solve
save
a
the world.
problem? Is
To
that what it
save the
was?
world.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. So it's 180 days to save the world. And I had to have a
Save the
title,
world.
right? And yeah.
Okay.
And, because that's always the big thing. Like the knight has to save the princess and slay the dragon, and save the world, right? So it's 180 days, which some kids will ask me. And it's funny because this is a homeschool question. They'll say, what's 180 days for? And I was like, you probably don't know this being homeschool all the time, but how many days are in a traditional school year? And it's 180 days. So, but that's where the title came from. So I
180
wrote,
days.
yes, it's 180 days. Um, so we had high school was the original, so ninth through 12th grade, and they write a YA novel, which is young adult novel, which is very popular. And then we work middle school. We have an elementary school coming out. So by next, I think spring, summer, we will
Oh,
work
okay.
with all the way down to second grade. So second and third graders can actually write their own little picture book. They
Wow.
can draw their own pictures. They can write with a pencil or a pen, and we have it set up so that they can mail in their actual story. And our printer will scan that and send them back an actual physical copy of their book. So just because the reward, you mentioned it
Amazing. I
yourself,
love that.
the the
That's
reward is
great.
huge.
So
It's
you do
it's seeing
that.
something in print.
Okay. All right.
I'm so sorry. I
That
lost you for a
that's amazing
second.
and something they'll treasure. Yeah, I apologize again for the technical issues that I'm having on my end. Yeah, so that's so neat. So you're coming on with an elementary, but you've got some middle school, high school products. What are some other like innovative elective type courses for just anyone generally, or for
Yeah.
homeschool moms to consider for their kids?
I'm so sorry. The my daughter's
Are
TV
you still there,
behind
Sarah?
me. The
You're
TV behind
shifting.
me turned to, yes, I'm shifting. I'm so sorry. The the TV behind me went to a commercial,
Okay,
and I saw it at the last
we're
minute.
good.
So I'm so sorry about that. Okay, yes. So
Okay.
uh, yeah. So for us, I'm really excited. I actually have a new project. So we have some study skills. It's all on our website. We have some study skills, how I teach kids to memorize
Oh,
and
so
learn
needed.
and speed read. And yeah, you truly can. God made our brains so perfect and so capable that I teach kids how they can memorize, usually with 90 to 100% accuracy on tests, and it's fun. And I teach
Wow.
workshops at a lot of the conferences. I teach workshops for, it's called Vincephalin Code, and we do live demonstrations. It's so much fun. Like I have so much fun at these conferences. And
Mhm.
then one of the other projects I'm actually working on is I met a parent came to my novel writing workshop in Atlanta just a couple weeks ago or a month ago, and she came up to our table, our booth, and she was talking to me. And she said, she was not a homeschool mom specifically, but they had taken, her husband and herself had taken their two middle graders out of school, and they traveled for 6 months and did world schooling. And so she ended up in 2020
Wow.
writing a book about it. And it's a memoir, and she wrote it from the
Mhm.
point of view of her two daughters. So she switches between the two point of view, and it's called the
Mhm.
Passport Project. And it was so neat, such a neat idea, the way she did it. And I was like, okay, I meet a lot of people who have written books, obviously in the circle that I'm in. So I was like, I'm going to order it on Amazon. Again, it's called the Passport Project. I tell you, it was so good. I was laughing so hard, so hard. I had tears streaming down my face, and I'm a book critic. Like, I'm very critical about books. I was
Mhm.
laughing so hard. I had tears streaming down my face. I couldn't even read it back to my husband. I was laughing so hard, and the whole book was amazing. I read the entire book, and she has been asked to, they're actually using her book, which is considered a creative nonfiction. And they're using her book in public
Mhm.
schools, I believe it's Alabama, to teach social studies and geography. And her book is gaining a lot of momentum.
Wow.
Yeah, it's got like 4.9 stars on Amazon, and which nobody gets
Wow.
4.9 stars on Amazon. I just
Mm.
strongly recommend the book. Anyways, so she has asked me to write the educational workbook to go along with it so that it can officially be taught in public schools as a between sixth and eighth grade social studies and geography, which, geography is always a lot of fun. And I have traveled internationally, so it'll be a lot of fun. So we have new projects all the time. And that's one thing I definitely want to mention, especially to those that might be watching. We are a traditional publisher, and
Mhm.
I do believe that a lot of moms, just like me, they have these neat ideas or things that they have found that really work with their kids. And they want to we want to bring it to market, like just like I did with my encephalon code, just like I did with 180 days, just like I'm helping complete the project for my friend who her name is Kelly McIntyre,
Mhm.
who wrote the Passport Project. We want to put this level of creative, critical thinking, inspirational material in the hands of parents. So anyone who's watching, hey, if you have like, hey, I've done something cool, I just don't know how to turn it into an official curriculum. We have a development
Mhm.
team at Innovative Learning Press. We want to hear your ideas, what you've done, and we want to help you turn your ideas and your home-based educational projects, turn that into a curriculum so that we can then put that in the hands of homeschool parents across the country. So please reach out to
Awesome.
us. Please let us know what you've been doing. We want the homeschool community to be very self-supportive. We think
Mm.
that we have all the talent in the world right here in the homeschool community, and we want to make sure that we continue to feed into that creative mindset that is in every homeschool experience.
I love that. Thank you. And thanks. And we're going to have the link to Innovative Learning Press in our show notes, I believe, today. So, folks, if you didn't catch that, you can find it there. And I love it because homeschool moms, homeschool kids are an amazing lot, and there are a lot of creative ideas. And a lot of times you do run in. Well, let's just say this. I know a lot of people that are choosing to homeschool, they do it for different reasons. But right now, I think I don't have, research or numbers on this, but a lot of times people I'm talking to are pulling their kids out of the educational setting they are because there's a need. There's a need that's not being met. And so then they've got to meet it now in the homeschool setting. And sometimes there are products out there to help them, but then sometimes there aren't. And I'm glad that folks like you are out there making a way to help um, those ideas, put them into a tangible product that can be shared with other people that are experiencing the same thing. I think we were just, I really appreciate you being with us here today, Sarah. I know that we've had a few people joining in, and we did put the link to your company, Innovative Learning Press, in the comments. But parents that are watching right now, HSLDA, we are here to make homeschooling possible, to help your kids to really shine and give them a chance to pursue their passions. So we encourage you to check out what Sarah's doing, and also just, I hope the tips, just general tips of really giving your kids a why, helping them to tell their stories, being a good listener, and learning about them throughout this homeschool experience. We hope that we're able to help you do that better, having spent this time with Sarah today. Do you have any closing words for us, Sarah, as we kind of wrap?
Yeah, just encourage parents, enjoy these years from somebody who has passed them
Mm-hmm.
already. I miss it. I miss that. Yeah, so enjoy it. I know it seems like forever, but it does pass. And yeah,
Yeah.
and again, you're doing a great job. Trust me. Trust me. You're doing a great job, moms and dads out there. Keep it going.
Awesome. Thank you for those words. Hey, we have tons of resources on our website, hslda.org, including if you are looking, we've talked about electives today. Maybe you're like, what in the world is an elective? We've got articles on choosing electives in high school on our website, just so many resources about choosing curriculum and much, much more. So if you're not a member of HSLDA, we encourage you to check us out. You can go to hslda.org/join, and it's very simple to enter your information and be a part of what we're doing and allowing us to come alongside you and to support you. We have consultants, we have attorneys that are there to answer your legal questions and to help get you off to a great start with your homeschool journey. So I'm going to leave you now. Thanks again, Sarah. So nice to meet you and talk with you. Thanks everybody for hanging in with us. Apologize for some of the technical issues, but God bless you as you start this new year in homeschooling. Bye for now.